Bandidos, what's up? It's your boy Tux here, and we're back with the Division 2. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're in the PTS server checking out the new gear set that is coming in Season 2, which is just a few weeks away. It's called Tipping Scales, and it's all about crits and LMGs. Let's do this.
Wait, did we just become best friends? So nice to meet you. I think you're cool.
Piece of shit wristwatch.
First, I gotta say, please excuse my character's nudity. I am in the PTS server and things just kind of loaded up weird, but we're only here to test things out. So this is the new gear set called Tipping Scales. Now 2 pieces gives you 30% magazine size, which I'm already happy about. And then 3 pieces, 30% LMG damage, which is a huge reward. The new talent is called Throttle Control. Shooting build stacks to a max of 50. Yeah, but it's another stacking talent. The Division 2 loves stacks. Anyways, each stack provides 0.5% weapon handling and 2% critical hit damage. Lose 6 stacks per second while not shooting, and no stacks are lost if the enemy is suppressed. Now this is gonna come with red cores throughout, and that means you're gonna have a good chance at getting crits, weapon handling, and headshot damage as your sub attributes. You're gonna need to run all 4 pieces to get that bonus effect, and to tell you the truth, I think this gear set will be good parted out or in its entirety. One of the important details when we get a new gear set are the bonuses that are coming from the backpack and chest. Are they any good? Or are they just going to take up space in our stash? And this is important because our talents sort of get stale after a while. We're always running Obliterate. We're always running Vigilance or Bloodsucker, whatever. Gear set talents are a way to supplement what we don't have and keep things from getting super stale. So let's take a look. So the chest talent is called Sustainability, increases the maximum number of stacks from 50 to 75. More weapon handling, more crit damage. The backpack talent is called Snowball, increases the critical hit damage received per stack from 2 to 4. It literally doubles your critical hit damage. That's pretty darn cool. And maybe even one of the best gear set backpack talents in the game. But are they worth running? So they seem great, but when you consider that this is a stacking deal, how long does it take to stack? How fast do your stacks degrade? Will dictate whether at least the chest piece is worth running. Because additional stacks means you're gonna spend more time out of cover to build those, which often means you're taking more damage. And then when you lose 6 stacks per second while not shooting, that's a painful trade-off. But before we get into that detail, let's look at the potential. If we run the chest piece and we have 0.5% weapon handling per stack and we have 75 stacks, that's 37.5% weapon handling. That's actually really good because weapon handling includes accuracy, stability, reload speed. That's all stuff that an LMG needs. The 2% critical hit damage, what does that amount to? Well, if we don't run the chest piece, it's just 100% critical hit damage, which is significant actually. But when we add the chest piece, that takes that to 150. When we run the backpack, that's gonna double that, pushing you to 300% crit damage. Sizable. The gear set has everything you would need to be successful. You got a big mag with some solid base LMG damage and a really strong multiplier with the weapon handling to get you through those reloads. The weapon handling is also gonna help you build those stacks because in theory, you're landing more shots, so you're stacking easier. The name of the game is still going to be more time shooting than reloading because you're not always going to have enemies suppressed, and so you want to minimize the amount of decays that are happening here so that you can maximize the amount of damage you're putting out on an enemy. So if you've been around the game for a while and you're familiar with many of the talents, Throttle Control is basically like a giant strained talent. So strained is a talent that goes on weapons where the longer you're shooting, the more critical hit damage you get, and then it caps out. Now, the thing about strain that many of us have learned is that once you reach the cap, you don't spend a lot of time at the cap shooting on many of our weapons. But on something like an LMG, you can, especially if you have a bigger mag and a higher fire rate. So I think that's the magic sauce. And you throw in a really fast reload, then you're sitting pretty. The thing is about tipping scales is that it can potentially take any LMG and put it into that sweet sauce spot, because it'll take a weapon with a small magazine like the Pestilence and put it into the category of average magazine by giving it another 30 rounds when it comes to getting it to that sweet spot with a fast reload, throttle control with its weapon handling boost is enough to get you there. So all you have to do is bring in not the shittiest LMG in the game, and this will turn it into a beast. So tipping skills brings great utility and damage, and that's what's going to make it stand out from some of the other gear sets, and most of that's leaning on that 30% magazine size, because without that, it sort of blends itself very close to some of the other gear sets that we have, like Striker. Striker does give you 15% weapon handling. So although throttle control gets you 37.5% weapon handling, which is significantly more, it's still something you have to stack to, where Striker gives that to you right away, and it also gives you the rate of fire, which is also something that helps damage through the power of stacking and just from a raw DPS calculation. They're bringing unique values to the table, and a magazine size is valuable and unique to an LMG build. And then you have Umbra. Right, so Umbra is all about crits. One of the differences is the mechanics that goes with Umbra. Tipping skills and throttle control is pretty easy like Striker. It's point and shoot. All you have to do is land those shots. Umbra is a little bit different in that how it works is more about being in and out of cover. The good thing is that you start with full stacks and they degrade from there. So your power's up front, making it a little bit more bursty. But if you're running and gunning a lot, then you do have to pause and take a moment to get back in cover to refresh. Otherwise, you're just getting weaker and weaker. It's still a very good gear set. Either way, it's competing for LMGs in the crit category. It also delivers a very solid 40% rate of fire boost with a really good chest piece option. And it provides more crit chance, which you're going to need on a crit build. Although the damage is amazing and the weapon handling is too, at the end of the day, what's going to make tipping skills stand out and separate itself from the pack is going to come down to the two-piece bonus, the 30% magazine size. The second part that's going to make it stand out or determine if you like it or not is going to be how it stacks and how it degrades. Losing 6 stacks per second while not shooting is sort of a lot. And you're going to have to consider what your reload times are. The weapon handling stat, as you build it up, will assist there, so there's some variable to that. But at the very least, consider which weapon you're going to run with this. I'm using the military MK46, which I really like. It has a 850 RPM and a very solid base damage. Now, I realize mine's crap. I got optimal range instead of damage to armor. Also, I don't have gunner unlocked into PTS, so I'm not running that, which means I'm going to have ammo issues, and I have a slightly smaller mag than what I could potentially have. But if you look at the reload time on this thing, it's at 3.49 seconds. So without any additional weapon handling added to the build from the gear set, that means I'll lose 21 stacks through my reload cycle here. And that potentially gets better as we start building stacks and getting more weapon handling. The talent I decided to run with on this is Killer for that 70% critical hit damage for 10 seconds on kill. And I can feel it when it kicks in. It feels really good. But I'm wondering myself if I am better off just going with Strained. It would sort of synergize a little bit better with the gear set because it would start picking up that damage on my first attempted kill instead of after that first kill. And then I would reach peak and just be maintaining that from that point forward. Although Killer comes out to be more critical hit damage, I think the uptime from Strained might outperform Killer across a whole mission or checkpoint. So my impressions on using the gear set, I can say that I was impressed. It felt really good. I think it will compete with Striker for at least the LMG category. It is important to note that the talent doesn't say anything specifically about having to use an LMG. There's just the bonus of 30% LMG damage, which is significant enough to warrant you using an LMG. But if you needed to switch to your assault rifle or SMG or whatever, you still build and make use out of the weapon handling and crit damage talent, including the bigger mag. And I think that's an important detail. One thing worth noting is, like Striker, this is missing the added survivability element, which would make it the perfect gear set, I gotta say, if it had it. Yeah, there's no armor on kill, there's no armor regen or repair. You're gonna need to build that into this, especially because LMGs require you to spend a little bit more time out of cover to dispense that mag and constantly being out of cover to maintain the stacks. 20% armor on kill, building up some bonus armor might even be a pretty good idea, except the backpack is so freaking good, I don't know if it's worth losing it for bonus armor. You could also run the nimble holster. I do think the Tinkerer mask with Alpha Bridge talent is going to be great with this gear set. You could pair it up with something like Fast Hands. Fast Hands would be amazing with this gear set because it's also based on crits, and when you crit, it's going to cut into your reload time specifically, which is going to be the most critical metric when it comes to this build. And when you combine that with something like Killer and Strength, and then the backpack talent's critical hit damage, you're going to have enough damage. Yeah, I know many of us would consider putting double damage talents on this, but a fast reload would help you maintain those peak stacks at 300 crit damage. The suppression thing. So LMGs suppress enemies. The good news is this: when you have at least one enemy suppressed, you're not going to be degrading stacks. Yeah, wipe the sweat off your brow there. That's a big deal because when you're laying it down thick, you suppress enemies, and if all the enemies are suppressed, there's nobody to shoot. If there's nobody to shoot, you're not building stacks. You're degrading stacks at 6 per second, and sometimes they hang out in cover suppressed all day. And it's very frustrating when you're trying to whip through content. It's often going to happen just throughout combat that somebody's going to be suppressed. When that happens, it's going to prevent you from degrading your stacks while you're reloading. So although the 6 stacks per second sounds horrible, sometimes it doesn't kick in at all because of that suppressed thing. That being said, I think that is the one element I would ask the devs to improve. They should maybe cut that down just a little bit. Maybe 3 stacks per second would be a little bit more reasonable. So yeah, I think we got a winner here, which makes it 3 gear sets in a row, all big W's, right? So we had Refactor, that's the skill build that heals you at the same time. We had Measured Assembly, the skill build that destroys enemy tech and incoming explosives, and now a really good LMG set. I guess next all we need is a super sweet pistol gear set. And devs, if you're listening, more things like this that compete with Striker is desperately needed. And yes, keep focusing on the backpack and chest talents. Those are critical because talents we have in the game are just getting really dry. So it's nice to lean in on these when they're good. All right, Bandidos, let me know what you think about tipping scales. Is this something you'd run? Would you choose it over Striker? Catch you on the next one.
Thank you for hanging out with me. I'm Tuxedo Bandido, and if you found this video helpful, be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss out on the good stuff I have coming for you. And if you like content like this, be sure to check out the video I have recommended for you right here. If you have anything you would like me to cover, be sure to let me know in the comments below. And thank you to all the channel members and donors who make things possible. Tux Nation wouldn't be the same without you.
When you buy a game from Ubisoft, enter the creator code Tuxedo Bandido to support the channel. Easy peasy.
Wait, did we just become best friends?